Badger fans, what comes next after Iowa? What can the Badgers do coming out of this bye week with Oregon on tap? And what was the mood of the team after the game? We're talking about that next on Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fam? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Cannot tell you how much I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Roast Ryan Herring, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. $5 bet gets $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. And man, as always, I am honored to bring on Nick Osen, 247 Sports. Nick, we got to start at Iowa, man. Like, we haven't talked in a minute. What was just, I know you were there. I know you were around the team after the game. I kind of want to start there, big picture. What was the mood? Like, what was the vibes from the team?
Yeah, Ryan, it's always a pleasure, my guy, being back. And this has been a little bit long of a stretch, kind of by our standards. But yeah, we're getting kind of some maybe some negatives out of the way here as we progress through the show. I was fortunate to be down there, and Ryan, that was a really tough one. Obviously, you saw the game, you saw kind of the margin of defeat. But to me, the biggest thing was really just how it happened. Every time I've even looked back at the box scores and just kind of rethinking about that game as I work on previews and things. And it was just the physicality that Iowa demonstrated. I don't think Wisconsin always lived up to that, especially in that second half, which was surprising with kind of the Hawkeyes focus in the run game, which we all expected. So kind of following the game, like you mentioned, we got Coach Fickell first. And I felt like there was, to me, two things. One, the obvious of being so upset, of course, about dropping a game, a rivalry game, losing it in that fashion. And you know well enough, man, Coach Fickell hates losing. You can say that about nearly any head coach, but like you can feel it really with him, which is something that obviously I think is a real positive. So I think that was number one. And number two, I felt like there was a kind of a realization, or I saw the wheels turning, like jumping into the bye week, the rest of the season, like, guys, we've got to clean some things up and we've got to do it quickly, is kind of the sense that I got without him saying that, of course, because you look at the season, there have been some great highs, there have been some tough moments. 5-4, not a bad record by any means, but that's still not at the magic number, at least of 6. And that obviously was not the team's goal, just 6 coming into the year either. So that's what I got, Ryan. If I could just say briefly, a couple guys that come to mind. Jake Renfro, we spoke with after. He was very honest, reflective, and I love his focus when you speak with him. Also was very complimentary and I guess maybe recognizable of the environment there at Kinnick. And then guys like Hunter Wohler, Kurt Neal, it was more just like, this isn't okay. And we're really going to see who's all in and who's ready to put in that work over the bye week, because this cannot be how this season kind of ends or is remembered.
Yeah, I think to me, one of the tough things for Badger fans and for me and probably for you, people who cover the team, you just don't know who the heck this team is sometimes, right? Like that Penn State game was a good game. They fought against one of the best teams in the country. They were coming off that stretch of wins against bad Big Ten teams, but they beat the crap out of them. And then you lose to Iowa 42-10, and it feels like you've gone backwards to the first couple weeks of the season. It's just like, who is this team? And I think that's what Badger fans are struggling with. Like, it's that lack of consistency. And I think it's a little bit of the lack, at least looking at it potentially through the Iowa lens, of maybe this team hasn't gotten better as much through the season as we had hoped. Do those things kind of ring true in your brain, or is that just more of a fan thing?
No, I wouldn't say that's just a fan thing. I think for me, it's really the better aspect, because I do think that through good and bad, the team's shown its identity at times. However, it was not reflected in the Iowa game. I mean, I truly thought the defense had really, really turned a corner. And I think it's more than that, because they were playing good ball for like a month. So I felt like that. And then I thought that there was kind of this pretty good run pass balance. Now, I feel like, to me, against a team like Iowa, you need an absolute like burner at running back. A home run threat, as people say. And I think the world of Tawi Walker, and I think Dupree is going to be a really, really good player. But like that was a moment you need a guy like Jonathan Taylor. Not like they come, around all the time, but you know, would have been maybe interesting to see if Cade Giacomelli, like potentially with his big playability, breaks one. I don't know. I mean, I understand. Obviously, he hadn't been getting as many reps, but like Iowa's tough on the edges, as we saw. And if you're not bursting through that gap or going on the outside, hitting it crazy, they're catching up. I saw like a couple plays that happened with Tawi. So I think that's, definitely something noteworthy as well for me, Ryan. But overall, I like to say that's one you just kind of flush. Like I really would, because I don't think the Wisconsin is that team either. But then you look ahead, okay, you get the bye week, good time. And then arguably, I'm not sure if they're the best team in the country yet, but I think Oregon might have the highest floor of any team in the country. Most complete. As we talked about, where does that start, Ryan? In the trenches. They're really good there.
Yeah, let's talk really quick going into the bye week. Like what can get right in the bye week, do you think? And by get right, it's more of, are there any changes you see? Is this just more of this team really needs kind of that mental break? Because comes at a good time. Going to Kinnick's tough. Like you were in that environment. Like that's a great college football environment. Like you're coming off the Penn State game, which was an emotionally charged home game at night. Then you got to go to Kinnick. That's a tough two stretch. So the bye week comes in a great spot mentally. You can recharge. Is there anything you see coming out of this bye week tangibly that maybe gets this team in a better spot heading into that Oregon game and those last two huge games of the season?
They are huge. And I really like how you said that, my man. Tangibly it's tough, right? Because I'm not so sure that there are just these little tweaks or like a scheme difference here, things like that. I think it gets you a little bit mentally better in a good spot after a tough stretch. You even factor in there were a couple road trips early on too, right? So I think that's a great thing. I think at some level, like there is kind of a level of recognition of a pride, especially kind of the defensive performance after Saturday. Like I can tell you easily, without even getting to ask about it and things like that, that isn't what these guys expected. Like they really expected a more physical, like we talked about, but close, competitive Big Ten battle. You see who can kind of make one more play, two more plays in the fourth quarter. So I feel like there's that. And then, yeah, I'm sure that the offense is going to have to add to some creativity and things, because I think we saw, trying to remember exactly what game it was. We saw a splash of it when Van Dyke was still quarterback, South Dakota game. And then we saw some things early on at USC. And then I felt like the first half of Rutgers, like you saw kind of some more of these elements of the offense. I think they need to be recreated, because, hey, you're going to beat Oregon or you're going to lose. Like either way, I think just the way that they show up in that game, again, another national TV matchup, prime time. I think that's really, really important, Ryan, because I know that fans are at the point. I haven't seen a ton like give up on the season, but definitely very, very disappointed. And like, hey, what is going to happen next, just the rest of this season? And I think it is paramount for a good performance there. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think that was actually really well said. The phrase I'm going to pick out of what you said there was how they show up. And because we both watched a lot of ball, sometimes teams, and I don't think that is this team for the record, but sometimes teams get their tails kicked and then they go into a shell and it starts this death spiral of a season. I don't think that's this team, but we got to see it, right? That absolutely does not mean you beat Oregon, but that does mean you show up with great effort, with a good game plan. You take some shots. And I think Badger fans at this point would be proud of that. Like Badger fans want to see you compete against Oregon's better, right? We knew that at the beginning of the year. But show up and compete. It can't look like it did last weekend. Or yeah, I mean that the Oregon game's one extra week away, but it can't look like it did against Iowa. Is my point.
Yeah, I completely agree. And while the players themselves and the staff, let's say it's a close loss, it's not like they're jumping up and down. I mean, they're going for wins. They expect wins, of course, but excuse me, that type of thing can translate. I think of Ohio State. I think it was now about a month ago. Like they didn't play their best game at Oregon. It didn't crush their spirits, didn't crush them in the standings. They just got a marquee win at Penn State. And now they're number 2 in the playoff rankings, I believe I saw,
Yeah.
only after Oregon. So like it shows kind of the mental fortitude, the strength. And again, for what it's worth, I do believe Coach Fickle, I do believe Coach Tressel and the staff that the player leadership within this team is good. I really do think that guys like Hunter Wooler, Rico Holman, Jack Nelson, Riley Nowakowski, you can go on, Jake Chaney. I think those are real positives, but it has to translate. And I think you need to ideally get 2 out of those last 3.
Yeah. Let me ask you this really quick then we're going to shift into basketball, which I'm really excited to pick your brain on because I know you were there in the Kohl Center game 1. We talked about this before the show, but I get a lot of people asking me, is it Mabry time? Mabry Metzger. I've consistently kind of said, I don't think so. Especially not against Oregon. You just don't throw a true freshman into that environment. But curious, just really quickly, your take on, because that conversation is definitely happening.
Yeah, I've seen, I've seen a comment or two from my fans, kind of on our website. I actually got asked similar on radio this week. I don't think it is time, and that is no shot at all at Mabry. I think he's going to be a hell of a quarterback. But this team and this program, like they're going for wins right now. Has Braden Locke struggled? Yes. Turnovers have absolutely really been killer, but you're going to win a game. You don't throw the young man out there first start against the best team in the land in prime time. That's not fair to anybody. You look for Braden to establish a little consistency early. And then I still think, actually, I don't think, I know that he can win 1-2 of these games to get to that 6 or 7. And then continue to maybe get a rep here and there for Matoyer. We know he's getting reps at practice, obviously, now a member of the 2s. And you just see what the development looks like.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I completely agree with that. We take one quick break here. Hear from our friends of the show. We're going to get back. We're going to talk about basketball, including a player that really wasn't on fans' radar. Is that guy going to be in the rotation going forward? We'll do that next on Locked On Badgers with Nick Osen. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Robinhood Gold. Robinhood Gold. Did you know that with Robinhood Gold, if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood Gold is also boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. There's no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets the most for retirement thanks to their IRA with the 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the perfect spot for all your sports betting information, futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. I talk about it all the time. Like if you're good, I'm not great at it, but I bet with my heart. If you're good at it like Rajiv is, FanDuel's a great spot. NFL's going on. Obviously, NBA started up. College basketball just threw the wickets. It is such a great time. Always do it responsibly, but go hook up your friends over at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. $5. If you win your first $5 bet, you are guaranteed $150 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's get back into this with the great, and as I am always humbled to have him on, Nick Osen. Nick, man, as always, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to talk about what you're doing, where people can find your work.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Badger 247, part of 247 Sports, at the real Nick Osen on Twitter. Obviously, we've got a lot of things going right now. I know we're going to get more into a little bit of football recruiting. So, man, signing day's less than a month away, right? Basketball's underway, and I'm working on some things I'm really excited about in the coming weeks. That's all I'll say. So I'm very fortunate, blessed, as you say, man. Thank you for the platform, and thank you to those people that have really enjoyed the work. I've been impressed just this last 3 or 4 days. Folks are excited about this season we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I love it, man. And please go check out what Nick does. He does great work. And also just a great human being, like better human being than a content creator. And he's excellent at both is what I'll say. Let's talk hoops, man. So I kind of want to just start here. You're there. Wisconsin goes down about 20. What's your thought in that particular moment? We know what happened, and there's a lot of good to talk about, but just in that particular moment, what are you thinking?
So I did have one kind of like analytical, critical thought, and we know that I don't get, critical too often. And that was something that carried on from practice and the exhibition. And Coach Gard would say it himself. I texted somebody. I said, I'm worried about the defensive intensity, and I'm curious how many plus athletes that we're really seeing, on the floor to begin that game for Wisconsin, because it was a lot of open shots given up and kind of a lot of just taking jump shots. But I don't think my mind ever went to, what if this is an opening night loss? I really don't, just because I've seen that type of thing develop, and I know the offensive firepower that we got a little taste of seeing that go down Monday night.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because one of the points I was making in our Discord chat was, listen, if you go down, we know how and fans have a right to be like, oh my gosh, what is the Holy Cross is not a great team. You go down like that opening day. But I was telling people, guys, this team is going to shoot its way into deficits, and it's going to shoot its way out of deficits. And we saw the shooting, and that's what this team is going to be built around. They got over 33s up, and they went on a massive run, and this team is going to shoot the ball, and I think they're going to shoot a ball really well. I want to ask you specifically about a guy that I had Brandon Harrison on, and one of the nicest human beings in the world for starters, but Wisconsin basketball, Tom's guy, media director, he's awesome. And he said Jack Janicki might be the best shooter on this team. And I want to pivot into that question for you. Janicki, walk-on from last year's class, not on a lot of people's radar, was in the game, had consistent minutes. Do you think that's a thing throughout the year?
So, Ryan, I don't toot my horn too often because, I'm grateful that to just be doing this job and speaking with you and all the fans. I mentioned him. This would have been a month and a half ago, speaking with a couple standouts with the team, John Blackwell, Max Klesman. So shout out to those guys. They mentioned him to me. I put it out right away. Best shooter, man. I mean, Brandon gets to see a lot. He's got a great looking lefty stroke. I still, I really, really trust. I shouldn't even say trust, just in terms of sheer shooting. Doesn't have to be the best player. Man, I love a guy like Klesman, and I'm still super high on Ilver's shooting ability. But I know Janicki was somebody we were both pumped to talk about. We were waiting to see if he'd get in. And obviously, I think he made a nice impact. It was actually like a perfect representation of kind of how Coach Gard describes what he does. These are my words, not his. I'm not sure, one or two things he's great at. I think he's good at just about everything you need to do on the basketball court. And I think he's a really complete player. And I mentioned it in our game thread. There's a reason this dude had D1 scholarship offers. And he came to play for Coach Gard and the Badgers in Wisconsin as a preferred walk-on. So I think it's just kind of shows some of that great history you can see with quickly developing under this staff and just in this program. And I think long-term, man, do I think he's going to end up being a starter this year? No, might not end up starting, at Wisconsin. But I think he can be a fixture just because of the versatility he brings specifically on both ends. But Ryan, I think he's a guy that can guard 1 through 4 if he has to.
Yeah, I like that point there, the versatility, because we saw him on the break, make a really nice pass in the winter. If you can pass the ball, you can move, you can shoot. Gorgeous pass, right? Most freshmen are just pulling that. Listen, if I'm at the Y, I'm pulling that. I don't care if you got post position. I'm taking the shot.
Well, dude, or even they'll pass it, right? But maybe too late. Whereas I remember writing a great call. He kind of froze the defender, dropped it down to Winter, and it was just an easy finish. Really, really impressive stuff.
No, he is feel. Here's the other thing I'd say with Janicki. Just look at people look like they belong. People still will look at him through the lens of he was a PWO, but he doesn't look like that. He looks like a scholarship guy to me.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think there's a ceiling there. But I think he's a rotational guy. I really do, because he can shoot. He's versatile. He can defend. He plays hard. I want to kick it back to you and just open-ended question. Something else that stood out to you from game one, and maybe something that hasn't been talked about a ton. A lot of people talked about what Tanjay did, and you can still go there if you want. But yeah, something else that stood out to you game one.
Yeah, I won't go Tanjay because people have talked about it, written about it, And while I maybe didn't expect 23, 25 points, like I expected a really good day from him. I expect a good season. But to me, man, somebody showed me something that's a young player that Coach Guard and the staff love, and that's Nolan Winter. I'm not sure, based on what we've seen at practice, I expected a night like that so early. Quiet first half. I'm not sure he scored. I want to say he didn't score in the first half, based on just kind of the scorebook that we got at halftime. I thought I remembered he had 0 total points. And I think he is slowly evolving into his own, right? We know what he can do as potential rim protector. He's got more of like the guard wing background. We know he can shoot. But the way that he posted up, he's grabbing big time boards. He's finishing an and one. I remember a couple staffers were pumped, jumping up and down after that, because it's like you're seeing the growth, you're seeing the evolution. And as we know, it has to continue. It's just one game against Holy Cross, but you asked me, that was probably my biggest takeaway. And then just a quick note I want to mention, not a surprise at all. We've talked about on the show, but Cam McGee, man, I'm happy for somebody like that, like he's waited his turn. And I kept saying, I think this guy is going to be the starting point guard. Okay, he didn't start, right? But he played starters minutes, clearly the best lead guard right now. And man, just Guard loves him. The teammates love him. I think he's a great piece and a representation of how you can be developed.
Yeah, he brings something unique too, right? If you're going to be a guard and not be an elite guy, what can you do that's unique? Well, he provides quickness, defensive ball pressure, the ability to get in the paint. He hits some shots, and he's tough. Like he will go in and he will attack a post player at the rim and try to finish through him. So
yeah,
I think that's a big piece of that as well. We're going to take one more quick segment. We're going to come back and talk about that 2025 class. I'm going to ping Nick on what Draden Pavey brings to this class and why he was such a big get. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. We're going to take one quick break for our friends of the show. Get back to this incredible episode. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing friends over at Hims. Listen, life is a blender of spontaneous moments. You can be sitting there on the couch, having the IPA, a bowl of Cheetos in front of you. Then you watch Kenzel Doe go ahead and house a punt return, or you see Graham Mertz look like Dan Marino in his first action, or you see Slam Sam Decker catch an oop and bring it home. And you want to be ready in those moments. That's what Hims is here for. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. The process is 100% online. There's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims helps you find the ED option that works for you. For when those Kenzel Doe, Melvin Gordon magical moments hit, you want to be ready for those. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options at hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable, compounded products which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions do apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on products and subscription plans. Let's get back into this incredible show. Last talk, we've had two pickups in the 25 class. Emmett Bork, the tight end, in-state kid, and Draden Pavey. I want to start with Pavey. What are your thoughts on him? Because the film's awesome. Like, it looks like he took a big jump.
We love him. I mean, I say we, you and me, plenty of fans. Like, this is a really, really nice addition. And I think that it'd be, I guess, the three guys in the D-line class, he's got an argument, at least, to maybe be the most college ready in that first year and a half, 2 years, I think, because obviously he's got the size. Now, I don't have it written down. I'm going off memory, but I believe 6'3", 305, 310 right now.
Yep.
You get to memorizing these at some point. He's good in the run. Obviously, you need to be at that size. But, man, what I saw a little bit like of kind of that get off, the burst this year, getting in the pass rush, tackles for loss. I know he's got a great mentality. And I just felt like there was a reason I almost put a crystal ball back in June, because I just felt like he was an EJ Whitlow guy. I really did. And obviously, things unfold at Purdue. Now he's in the class. And I think that was a really smart decision. Quite honestly, I think both sides, both parties will benefit from that. And I just feel like he will be the potential guy to be a multi-year contributor. in this defense for Wisconsin.
Let me ask you this. I'm really interested on your take here because I obviously pay really close attention to Wisconsin recruiting, which you do, but you also look nationally. Like you have your lens has a bigger aperture than mine does. Is this the type of recruiting class that the defensive line the Badgers need to get, or is it still need to get better? In other words, if they got this type of class every year, is that good enough?
Man, that's a really good question. I think, well, I'll say this first. And I think our guys at 247, absolutely some of the best. Like we get to more games than anybody. But Xavier Ponu is somebody that's underrated right now. Okay. He is at least the highest of 3 stars. I believe he's a 4-star player. So in that lens, as you were just kind of describing, let's say even if he's an 89, we won't even go full 4-star right now. If it's 89, 87 in Pavey, 87, 88 for Petaway, who's more the high ceiling guy. Yeah, if you get 3 guys like that every year, I do think that's good enough. If you want to, mix in a 4-star, obviously here and there, like nobody's going to complain. But I think, I like the idea of, okay, 3 to 4 guys. Maybe one you'd love to kind of get some early snaps comparable to like a Dylan Johnson. One that developed, play by year 2, year 3, and then one you don't know when, maybe, right? But if he develops, if it hits, like you're talking about a high ceiling potential guy, I generally think that would be good enough. As we know, other than quarterback, I'm not sure there is kind of a more highly sought after position, like a top end D lineman or a top end edge. I don't believe there is. Certainly in the transfer portal, there aren't many, that are kind of more highly sought after guys that get the highest NIL money. So it's intriguing, but, Pavey, really good addition. And I think overall, it's a really nice first class for EJ Whitlow.
Yeah, so I agree with you on this. I think if you can land this type of class every year, you're doing pretty good. Also agree Ukpono is underrated. The guy's like a sawed-off tree trunk. Like, you're just not going to push him around. I think his upside, he's got a lot of upside, but I just think his floor, I'd be stunned if he's not a productive college defensive lineman, quite frankly.
Stunned.
And stunned.
Yeah,
I agree.
dude.
Yeah.
No, he's under. I would say that if I was closer to the ratings guys there, I would tell them myself, like, they do great work, but I think he needs to be a little bit higher. And that's okay to say because believe, these guys in Texas, they've got more players to see than anybody. So not blaming, our guys at all, but he's better than an 85, 86.
Yep, agreed. I'm going to kick it back over to you for the next kind of question. 25 class, I know you've been able to see some more people, talk to more people. Any other thoughts on the 25 class that you want to kind of put out there, or specific players that you've talked to recently or seen that have really interested you?
Yeah, I've got a few fresh ones, man. I'm working on some exciting things for signing day, a little teaser there. So that's keeping me busy. A couple guys, I would say, well, Jamari Washington, I won't go into much because we've given him a ton of love on this show, well-deserved. Put out a story on Mason Posa, who loved his time back in Madison. Man, bonding with these guys. He talked about Xavier, he talked about Luke Emmerich, Cooper Catalano, who else? Eugene Hilton. I think these guys are really bonding and excited about the potential. I need to catch up with Nick Clayton soon, but we called that he'd be getting a bump. He is now a 4-star. Yep. Very well deserved for him. And then I recently saw 2 in-state players too, being kind of across the U.S. in terms of seeing these commits recently. And, I think Cooper Catalano, that was the best football that I've really seen him play. And I'm higher on him than a lot of people. But, just in terms of diagnosing, right, reading, reacting, some of his sideline speed, he looked terrific. I had him down for 17 tackles against a good football team in the playoffs. Like, that's damn good. And Grant Dean, man, we will see, how he kind of develops, but he could be a legitimate, in my eyes, power conference guy at safety or running back. This dude is legit. I'm grateful that I got to see him. I might be able to see him one more time this fall, but just athleticism, speed, strength, body type, focus. He's legit. So a few notes that I've seen with my own eyes in person, and not sure exactly when folks will be listening to this one, but I will be seeing at least one more group of commits this weekend.
I love it, man. I want to throw this comment up here, and you kind of hit on, but two people, Cujo and White Marlin, both kind of asked, do you think the 25 class is done?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of a big time question as we get a little bit closer. How I would answer that, definitely don't want to mislead anybody. I think the class is in a really, really good spot. I don't remember, just kind of based on the exact number difference, if after kind of last week, if we're at 22 or 23 guys right now, including Eric Schmidt as well at kicker specialist. But I would be, with just some of the visits, like potential visits or visits kind of lined up, with some of the kind of key positions and, just guys that we've written about, talked about in the past. I'd be a little bit surprised if it's done. So I would say, if I had to give an answer, no. You never know how these things develop over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But yeah, I mean, you saw what happened last year on signing day with a couple big time additions just on that final day. Now, I'm not overhyping. I don't necessarily expect something like that, but I'll be pretty surprised if the class is wrapped as is right now.
He is the great Nick Osen. I never try to keep him too long because I know he's living a very busy life. This is Locked On Badgers. As always, appreciate every single person tuning in. Go find Nick's work. Again, the Twitter account's right there. But he does excellent, excellent stuff over at 247 and just a better human being than even that. So go follow him. You will not regret it. For everyone tuning in on Wisconsin, we will talk tomorrow. Bunch of content still coming up this week. Got Rafael Davis, former Purdue star, coming up to talk basketball. Nicholas Clayton will be on Friday. I think we got Patrick Herb still coming up. So, tons of great content as always. On Wisconsin, appreciate you guys. Go check out Locked On Big Ten. And with that, we're out.